Do you want to hear Insider tell his story about watching NIBIRU come in with his buddies from the CIA? They watched it on the Hubble Space Telescope that you paid for with your tax dollars, yet they don't allow you to see the massive planet coming in. I'm going to give you the link while I tell you what he said, this insider. The video is called Insider Speaks Out About NIBIRU, Planet X, and Elenin. Well, Elenin is history. It broke up and flew out of here. So forget about Elenin, and he doesn't mention... Oh, he does mention Elenin. He says, extinction level event, NIBIRU is near. That's how he describes Elenin. Now, he said that he saw the discovery and the news about this 50 years ago on the cover of a science magazine, and you can click on that link anytime and it will open up a new window, and it will pause this window, and you can come back here and listen to the rest of this if you have a mind to. If you want to just go there and watch that, that's good enough. That magazine that he's referring to said that there would be a wave at least 3 miles high on all 3 coasts. Now, I'm counting the East Coast, the West Coast, and the southern coast, Louisiana, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida. So if you have a 3-mile wave coming in on all 3 coasts, anybody who lives within 100 miles of the coast is toast. It is clear by now that those people who control this information don't want you to have the truth. Or at least, I'll say, to give them the benefit of the doubt, I'll say they can't afford to let you know the truth. But when you see it in the sky, then all the speculation is done, because there it is, right there in the sky. Now, where's it going to come in from? Well, the sun is pulling it in. So if you want to know where it's at, you look toward the sun, and if it's behind the sun, there it is. It should be somewhere close to the sun as it's coming in. Now it's going to whip around the sun and then go back out. And so it will go out pretty much the way it came in, only on the other side of the sun. Does that make sense? You have to consider that the sun pulls this thing in like a magnet, and it swings around and goes around the sun. It does not collide with the sun. It goes back out. It'll be back in 3,600 more years. Now, we have historical record that shows that this thing has come in the past. It was called many names: the Destroyer, Wormwood, NIBIRU. It's called Planet X today as one of the popular names for it. It was called Nemesis. I didn't know that until I read the Pleiadians report. Wendell Stevens' report about the Pleiadians. You have this object that comes in. Now, this guy saw it, and his testimony is valuable because he and the CIA, he has buddies in the CIA, they watched it together for decades. And then finally, their line was cut. So when I say they don't want you to know the truth, and then I qualify that by saying they can't afford to have you know the truth, you have to consider that if the people knew, they would flee the coast on all 3 sides. Everybody living in the south would move north. Everybody who lives on the East Coast would move west, and everybody on the West Coast would go east, and you'd find a jillion people in Missouri and Ohio. This is not good because those states cannot handle a jillion people. There would be no place for them to lift up their hind leg and take a pee. We have to be realistic about this. So I fully understand the secrecy. I just envy those who have underground bunkers. And if you guys didn't get your ticket, well, I'm sorry. There wasn't that many to go around. I got mine. I'm just kidding. I never got one either. I'm out here like a dirt bag just like you. So if everybody moves from the coast, how easy would it be to sell your house and get all your equity out if a big wave is coming in? Nobody would buy your house. If the truth was out, it has to be speculative. Now, the rumors will send the wise inland, away from the coast, and the rest of you can bake in the sun. Who cares? I care. That's why I'm making this video. I would like to see every wise person surviving, and that means you've got to relocate now if you trust that this thing is coming in. Now, this guy gives his testimony. Listen to it and decide. Is he telling the truth, or is he a crazy man? If everybody tries to sell their house and they can't, there are going to be some losses. All that equity will be lost. What would the losses be in home equities alone? People work their entire lives to pay off the home, and then they read that a 3-mile wave is coming in and it's going to wreck their home. Well, they try to salvage whatever they can. They try to sell it to some sucker who doesn't know the truth. If this turns out to be the truth that this man is reporting. Now, I don't have any way to determine if he's telling the truth. I listened to his story. I think he's credible. But I thought Drake was credible. Then he starts talking about Nasara. I thought Benjamin Fulford was credible. And then he starts talking about $12 trillion bonds that were offered to him by the Queen. This is hysterical. This isn't reality. This is hysterical. This is comedy writing. If 80% of the people of Earth live within 100 miles of the coast, where are they going to move? 80% of 7 billion is 5.6 billion people homeless, jobless, and wandering around looking for something to eat. And they want to know if they can use your restroom so they can rest from wandering around. I think it's pretty obvious why the governments all over the world cannot afford to let you in on this private secret. You're just going to have to die. Now, is that bad news? Of course it's bad news. What did you think it was? Good news? People say, why don't you be positive? Well, the truth is sometimes not that positive, is it? It would be better if you know than if you don't know, because if you know a little bit in advance, you have time to prepare, maybe. Maybe. I think you deserve a little bit of a chance. Most people are going to call this man a crazy man. That's good for you. Listen carefully to what he says. If you don't think he's nuts, and you act and the other guy doesn't, you might be able to sell him your house. Anyway, the government has to keep this a secret, and I think the people have a right to know, even if they abandon their homes and try to survive. But I don't own those big banks with all those mortgages, because this will collapse the entire banking system, especially those banks that hold the mortgages. But there will be a chain reaction, too. One bank goes down and it takes down 40 others. So you see why they cannot afford to tell you the truth. They want you to go all the way up to the brink of disaster, believing their lies. Who holds the mortgages on these homes? Have you seen any trends that these banks are trying to get out of mortgages along the coast? If you do, that might tell you something. If you know how to do research, why don't you look into it? I don't know how to do that research. All I know how to do is type in google.com and type in my favorite word, and there comes all the web pages that have it. If you're more clever than that, then you lead the way. Those biggest banks who hold those mortgages are the same people who own everything else. And they are protecting their investments by keeping you away from the truth. Disinformation, misinformation, and outright lies and propaganda are all legitimate in their eyes because they're protecting their assets. It is in their interest to wage a disinformation campaign to confuse you and deny you the truth. You might think this is very selfish and greedy, but what can you do? You're going to be able to see it soon. And since it is being pulled in by the sun, you can look to the sun for signs of it. Are there any signs of it now visible? I hate to tell you this, but yes, there are, and those images are put out by the government. They're called SOHO. S-O-H-O. SOHO means stereo images. And do they show it? You betcha they do. Nancy Lieder's webpage, zetatalk.com, shows you the pictures of this winged system. I can't call it a planet because it's not a planet. It's a constellation. It's a star with 7 planets going around it. If you believe that he watched it coming in for decades with his buddies in the CIA. I just think it's an interesting video. Actually, it's an audio. The only thing you get to see is a red star, fiery hot, millions of degrees, and that's what he reports. How does Nancy Lieder know that those images are Nibiru? All the drawings of Nibiru from the last time it was here show a ball and wings. And when you look at this thing as it's coming in, on the Soho images, it looks like a ball with 2 wings. And those wings are a dust cloud, like rings around Saturn. There's 7 planets in those rings. And there's a whole lot of other debris. This guy says there are trillions of particles, and a particle to him is a 70-pound iron rock. So how does Nancy Lieder know that this object is coming in? Because she has gray friends. They're not from around here. They flew in on a flying saucer, like so many other visitors that have been coming here for thousands of years. And you can find the proof in all historical documents, wall drawings, photos taken by Billy Meyer and the group of 25 witnesses who lived at his compound and saw the spaceships coming in for decades. There are even photos from India taken at the ashram where Billy Meyer lived in the middle of the 20th century. I think I saw images from 1964 or perhaps 1956. I can't remember. At about 40 seconds into this audio video with the insider says that he was very excited about the article and he showed it to his family. The article said, "A 3-mile wave is coming in," and his family said, "Don't worry, it's not for another 50 years. And then he says, that 50 years is come and gone. And so the listener is thinking, hey, we're here, folks, if he's right. At 1 minute and 14 seconds into the video, he says, they've been watching it, referring to the CIA. And then he stopped and he said, I watched it. Now that is not hearsay. That's first-hand testimony. I watched it. This is not a man speaking in the third person. He said, I watched it. How did he get access to uncensored streaming images from the Hubble Space Telescope? He has friends in the CIA. This shows you that the CIA are the privileged class and you are a dirtbag. They're better than you. They deserve the safety of underground bunkers, and you don't. You deserve to die. You deserve to pay for those underground bunkers with your tax dollars. Now, isn't this a fair system? Why hasn't anyone else in the CIA come forward to tell us about this upcoming catastrophe? Don't they care about us? Well, if they did tell, they might be dead by now. Dead men don't talk much. That's why the CIA kills them. Are you catching on? These bankers are serious about protecting their assets. And they would even kill to keep this quiet. This is not about protecting the people or warning the people. The people are dispensable. This is about money. Money is and always has been much more important to bankers than human lives. And those at Goldman Sachs and Morgan Chase and other Illuminati-held assets are more important than your butt. When they ask you, how's the weather up there, you tell them it's windy. They believe the world is overpopulated and they would like to trim down to about 500 million, which means they want to kill 13 out of every 14 human beings on the planet. Now, why would they want to tip you off and tell you the truth? If you don't have an underground bunker, you can't survive on the surface. That's why the elite built the bunkers in the first place. And they built them with your money confiscated by the IRS. if you want me to be blunt about it. Have you noticed how much more desperate the IRS has become lately in the last decade as this thing got closer? They took everything the people had. They figure the assets you have are better off in their underground bunker than in your house on the coast, because your house on the coast will not survive anyway. So in a way, it makes sense to put the money underground. And so the IRS has been extremely aggressive, to the point that people thought that they have insatiable greed. I'm putting most of this in the form of questions to get you thinking, because I can't do your thinking for you. And Channel 7 is not going to do this for you either. They're going to tell you what to think. It's not going to be in the form of questions. They're going to give you statements which are lies, and when you get wise, you're going to say, I realize that this is propaganda. All media is owned and controlled by the same insiders who are allowed to know that Nibiru is coming in, as evidenced by this man's report, and some have even watched it on the Hubble Space Telescope, like this insider who has a heart and decided to tell us. This secret government controls the puppet president because they appointed him to that office, and he obeys their commands. They told him to ram the health care bill through, and he followed his orders. Now they have direct access to your veins and your parents, so they can kill them off when they can no longer pay the IRS. Then they passed the law that government can kill Americans even without charges. Can you see the handwriting on the wall? Why did all of these things happen? It makes sense when you add Nibiru to the picture. The IRS getting aggressive, the passing of these laws. They want to be able to get rid of people because they're going to die anyway. Now, if you were in charge and you knew that billions were going to die, wouldn't you want to get rid of some of them ahead of time so you can input 5.6 billion refugees? So they created this Galactic Federation of Light, and they told the people that a duplicate planet to Earth was created on the opposite side of the sun so we can't see it. Now, is that a tall tale? Talk about a nutcase. Whoever the guy was that came up with that concoction, there's your nutcase. There's your tinfoil hat. And some people are stupid enough to believe this. I believed it, so what does that make me? Never mind. Don't answer that. Let's move on. Well, if there was a duplicate to planet Earth, don't you think it would have water? Why wouldn't that duplicate planet be just as susceptible to tidal waves as this one that we live on? They also told us that aliens and ships would evacuate us. This is another lie. What's the point in lying to us? They need to stall our reaction to Nibiru by giving you false hope. If most of the population thinks they're going to be rescued, what are they going to do? Absolutely nothing. And what do these controllers want the people to do? Absolutely nothing. They want you to stay on the coast until the last day, and then they'll pick you up. And when they don't, you're going to be screaming, "Hey, what about us?" And they're going to say, "Sorry, suckers," just like they always do. They want to give you false hope. And if you think aliens are going to save you, forget it. They're playing you like a piano, man. This is like jazz. You know what I'm saying, man? They play you like you was a piano, man. Read the Sheldon Neidl webpage, PAO.com. POW, like powerful. POW, PAO.com. And go to the bottom of the page and click on updates. You can go back 6 years and read everything that they've ever put out. It's all propaganda. It's all baloney. Every single report sounds like they're going to land on the earth tomorrow and you're going to be saved. They're going to give you lots of money, and they're going to give you devices that make free food. You're going to fly around in anti-gravity craft. Hey, don't laugh. I believed it. I believed it for years. I was telling everybody we're going to be rescued. It's funny, those people never believed it. They were smarter than me. So read those reports on the Sheldon Neidl page and tell me if you weren't being played, or the people who read them weren't being played. I'm telling you, they play us all like we were piano heads. Is it okay if I call you Piano Head? Just a friendly reminder. Mr. Piano Head, and if it's a woman, Ms. Piano Head. We should all remind each other that we've been had. We've been played by the secret government. This insider comes out and tells us, hey, I watched it. It's real. Do you believe him? Listen to his testimony and tell me if you think he's speaking from actual experience or if he's the greatest actor since Al Gore. At 1:23, he describes this object as a solar system with planets. He talks about the debris or the trash around it. And he says the CIA told him that the average dust particle weighs 70 pounds. It's made of iron. And when this constellation comes passing by Earth, it won't be any closer, he says, than about 20 million miles. But you know, the sun is 93 million miles away. And if this sun comes by, it's going to get pretty hot here because he said it was millions of degrees hot. I think that's going to scorch the earth. I think it's going to burn a lot of things. And there are predictions that say just that a third of the earth would be burned as this thing comes whirling around. But what happens is the earth gets locked into position with this thing because they're both magnets. And so it probably only scorches one side of the earth. But if it is a star, a blazing hot star, and it comes within 20 million miles of Earth, it will be almost 5 times closer, or 1/5 the distance of the sun. And if the sun came in that close, it would burn everything up. I don't know how much heat this thing has, but it has 5 times the mass of Earth, according to some scientists. Anyway, this guy says these 70-pound rocks are going to rain down on us like hail. I have never been hit with a 70-pound iron rock falling from the sky. Have you? But I think that if hail can dent a car, I'm talking about ice hail, little tiny balls that land on the hood and they dent it, or they break the windshield. If ice can do that to your car with little tiny golf ball size rocks of ice, then what would a 70-pound iron rock do that came in from space and is traveling about 10 kilometers a second? I think it would damage homes and buildings, cars, trucks, farm equipment, tractors, barns. Everything you need to survive should be damaged. It'll wreck all the satellites. As it comes in, it's going to hit those and they're going to shatter. Because space is very cold. If something moving like a bullet that fast hits cold metal, it will probably shatter it. I don't know. I'm not a metallurgist, especially one who specializes in space. But the temperature out there is very, very cold. Like 400 degrees below zero, something like that, Fahrenheit. And if that satellite gets hit with a rock, it's going to break it. It's going to render it useless. And so all of our communications are going to be destroyed. So it's going to be pretty rough on the surface. But if you got a nice cushy bunker, you'll be okay. Can you suck up to anybody in the CIA? Tell them you need one of those passes desperately? Try to save 1 or 2 of your kids, too. If a farmer's tractor is destroyed, how much food can he grow for you? If a manufacturer's plant is destroyed, how long will it take him to rebuild it if there's nobody providing resources? The whole system collapses. The whole civilization is destroyed if we get rained down on with 70-pound rocks. He says there are trillions of them. He saw them. So how long does it take to repair a factory if you have no raw materials? If the sources of all those materials is also destroyed, how long does it take to rebuild? I'm sorry to ask you these disturbing questions. I'm trying to be positive. Here's what's positive. you're going to die. Knowing the truth might help you prepare. And you have two choices, to know the truth or not know the truth. If you choose to know the truth, don't blame me. I'm not bringing you the news, this guy is. Blame him. Don't worry, he's probably dead. But he says if the planet is pelted with 70-pound rocks, everything will be destroyed. And the Earth is made up of tectonic plates, and they're being pulled by the gravity of Nibiru. And so we're having a lot of earthquakes and volcanoes. Nancy Lieder told us that we would be having a lot of volcanoes long before we had any volcanoes. And she said that every volcano that's gone off in the last 10,000 years will be going off again. And I've been watching them, and it's turning out to be true. And a lot of other predictions they made are also proving truthful. So the Nancy Lieder webpage, I think, is a good source of the truth. And that's why the government wants to close them down. If there's a very strong pull of gravitation from a large object, do you think it's going to affect the moon and pull it out of orbit? People are reporting that the moon doesn't look right. It's in the wrong place. When Venus recently crossed the sun, they said it was 10 minutes late. What does that tell you? Do you think that these guys are off by their calculations by 10 minutes? Nancy Lieder's most recent webpage says it was 10 minutes off. And that means that Venus is being pulled out of orbit a little bit. 10 minutes is not the end of the world. Nibiru is. Now that happened on June 5th and 6th, 2012. And today is what, the 10th? It's Sunday. If the moon and Venus are being pulled by this thing, then what about the satellites? Those have a very delicate orbit. And if those are pulled out of orbits, we're going to lose them. Some will come crashing to Earth and others will fly out into space. There's no emergency system for saving them either. So I think that if this man is telling the truth, this insider, I think we all better pay attention. We better determine if he's telling the truth. And then we better do something, either way. Flour, pasta, they'll buy everything. And they'll pay whatever they have to. The stores will double and quadruple their prices and they'll get it because money will be worthless. An entry on a ledger will be worthless. You go to the bank and draw out all your money and go to the store and the prices are out of reach. Your money can't buy anything. So we need to look at what this guy is saying and ask, is this real? We need to look at Nancy Lieder's webpage and look at the Soho images and say, is she right or is NASA right? She says that NASA's airbrushing all of these things out and they can't keep up because there are too many images to airbrush and they make mistakes and they leave some in and then the cat is out of the bag. Don't you wish you had an underground bunker with food and water and supplies like those guys in the CIA, those wise guys? Those cities are 1.5 to 4.5 kilometers down, and there are hundreds of them. They're called DUMBs, Deep Underground Military Base, and if you're not invited, it's too bad. I guess only the beautiful people are going to be able to survive this, if it's true. They took a television camera and they went down and they interviewed some of the guards to these underground facilities. And the guards said they will kill anyone who approaches the entry. They'll do what it takes to keep you out. So you're not going to crash their party. They have armed guards ready to kill. Life on the surface will not be sustainable with all the crops destroyed, all the means of farming destroyed, and winds of 300 miles an hour that will wipe out anything that survived up to that point. The hail of rocks weighing 70 pounds each will have its toll on our civilization as well. Everyone should be asking, is this guy telling the truth? I wish there was a positive way to present this to you, but sometimes the truth is not so positive. What would you like me to tell you? That this is going to be fun? Camping out? If this was going to be fun, they wouldn't have to hide the truth from you. What did you think this was going to be? A hurricane? A tornado that you can hide from? Where do you go when there's a tornado? You go to your basement. Well, what if it's going to be a really big tornado? Then where do you go? You need a DUMB, Deep Underground Military Base. And that's why they were built. They only had 50 years to build them, and they did okay for the elite. But if you didn't get your pass by now, it might not be coming at all. So what can you do? You're already doing it. You know what I mean? I mean, if you've been in the dark, stay in the dark, because ignorance is bliss. Capiche, paisano? If you don't know anything, just keep it that way and don't panic. If you see something in the sky and you finally figure it out, rejecting the secret government's explanation, then you probably won't be in a panic for very long, because by that time the passing of this collection of planets and a sun, as the insider describes it, will be brief, and you can enjoy your life along with everyone else right up to the minute when everything is blown away. Put on your headphones and turn on some jazz, piano jazz, and enjoy what little time you have left, Mr. Piano Head, because by that time there is no more need for preparation. The stores will be empty when you see that thing in the sky, and there will be no hope of those stores ever being restocked again. Money will be worthless anyway. An event like this will cause financial collapse, and pieces of paper with numbers on it, currency denominations, will be less useful than toilet paper. Toilet paper will have more value than your dollars. Prices will skyrocket as shortages prevail. If you have a stock of beer, get drunk before someone puts a gun in your face and takes it from you. The insider said the thing he saw had 7 planets and its own sun. Is he right? He was using the Hubble Space Telescope and watching it with CIA buddies who were telling him the science of these things as it was coming in. Don't you wish you were in this insider club? Well, you're not, but at least you have his testimony, and so you're not entirely left out. That's positive, isn't it? Well, just think of this. Somebody in government has decided to allow this man's testimony to remain on YouTube. And I think I know why a Nazi would do that. Some of those guys in the Nazi regime think that the brightest should be spared. They should be warned and saved, if possible. But how is that possible? They have tickets for the underground cities and you don't. So no matter how bright you are, you can't feed yourself on the surface even if you are tipped off and you move from the coast where you are toast. If all the fresh fruits and vegetables on the surface are destroyed, what are you going to eat? Shoelaces? How are we going to rebuild? It will take decades to recover from this. A manufacturing plant went up because there were places already existing that could supply them with materials. When you destroy all of that, you have to start from the beginning. And when you have to start over, some of the sciences can be lost. When the Palladians dropped off their own people, and they came back decades later, they found that they had regressed. They became wild again. Well, if you spend 12 hours a day planting seeds, what time do you have left for the internet? And it's not there anyway. Think about it. You can't just reorder the materials you need and have them sent to you. Everything is destroyed. The ability to replace those things that were destroyed is also lost in the destruction. We have a very fragile economy, and it's susceptible to sudden crash for a variety of reasons. Those who controlled our economy for decades caused crashes just by restricting credit. Then they bought up all the best businesses, and then they allowed the credit to flow again, and everything resumed. Good times, only they owned everything now. A lot of times they use government money to buy these things. And when they use government money, you know who the government is? Now it's you. They use your money. You're the government. They use your money to buy things. When government has privileges, that's not you. That's them. They use government money to buy General Motors so that they can guarantee that no efficient engines will ever be put into cars and trucks. So you will always be forced to pay $4 a gallon for gas now and $40 a gallon in the future because of the slavery. You are a slave. Did you know that? Sorry to bring you the bad news. I thought you knew. Isn't it time you get a clue about you? At about 2 minutes into this video, the insider says that when he first started seeing it, it was a fuzzy red dust ball. But over the years, he and his friends watched it, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And by the time it appeared to be across the street, somebody pulled the plug and encrypted the signal, and the NIBIRU party was over for the CIA. The party was over, but the hell was just beginning here on Earth. And this man decided to do an interview and tell others what he knows, what he witnessed. And if you're clever enough to know the difference between personal testimony and third-person rumors, then you have access to the truth, as it is being reported in this video testimony of an insider who wants you to know. I don't know if this insider has thought this through. I mean, informing us of the upcoming event. Where are we going to put all the people who flee the coastal areas? And how are we going to feed them? Who could handle so many refugees? Can you imagine the entire state of New York moving to Ohio? If Ohio's population grew by 30 million people, it would be a boom that would last 50 years. But if you move those 30 million people in 1 month, it's a disaster. More people will die from being without food and water and shelter than would be killed by a 3-mile-high wave. So what good does it do to tell anyone? Do you think the insiders know which areas are going to flood when sea levels rise? Clues for you to figure it out. But let's say that they're right. 600 feet rise in sea level puts most of Illinois underwater. All of the land around the Mississippi is underwater, and Washington, D.C. is also underwater. And the coast of Georgia is found in Atlanta. Edgar Cayce also talked about this. If all the area that's 600 feet above sea level is underwater, then the Great Lakes will empty into the Gulf of Mexico, just like Edgar Cayce predicted, that it will be salt water from New Orleans to Chicago. And the narrowest width of that sea will be about 50 miles. Just like Al Bielek described when he went to the future. He wasn't the only one who went to the future. Andy Basiago went to the future many times. One time they sent him to the year 2013, and his assignment was to go to the Supreme Court building and tell them what he saw. He came back and said it's under 100 feet of water. This was called the Pegasus Project. They said 100 feet of water? How do you know? He says, because there's algae growing on the columns. And then he emptied out his boots and they were full of water. I don't know how he breathed underwater. You have to ask him. He's a lawyer operating in the state of Washington. He is a very articulate man. He is very credible. Not everything he says is credible. When he talks about life on Mars, I don't buy it. I think there is life on Mars, but I don't think he found it. I think he found a shadow that looks like a human being. We tend to see human faces and things, and we think that means human beings. That's just craziness. So the Supreme Court building rests on ground that's about 85 feet, 88 feet above sea level right now. None of that property is more than 90 feet above sea level, give or take 5 feet. If the sea level rose just 200 feet, the Supreme Court building is under 100 feet of water. And this was the year 2013. So there is no soon, and how soon, real soon garbage like you get from Sheldon Neidl. Who else traveled in time? Ascot took Billy Meyer back to meet Jesus, and they brought a Russian with them named Jitsu. So where did the time machines come from? Well, the aliens brought theirs, but Nikola Tesla died and left behind the plans for one that was used to, they built it. Nikola Tesla gave us alternating current, and we light our light bulbs and computers with this type of electricity, not the type that Thomas Edison was pushing, DC. AC had some advantages. So this genius Nikola Tesla designed a time machine, and he left the plans behind. He did not build it. He died in 1943, and the War Department rushed in and seized all his papers. And they built the time machine, and it worked. And a lot of people died as they were trying to figure out how it worked. Andrew Basiago routinely went to the future and brought back the records of upcoming events so that those privileged people could know what the future was. And if you think they didn't make a killing on the stock market and that kind of thing, forget it. They did. They knew exactly what was going to happen, and they placed their bets. There is rumor, personal testimony from people who were involved, not rumor, but personal testimony, that they changed the outcome of the Civil War, that the South actually won, and they changed the outcome of World War II, that Hitler actually won. But I think the Nazis won because we have Nazis in government today, and the Department of Homeland Security is proof, and the TSA is proof. Now, what do you do when you compare the personal testimony of all these people? There are two possibilities. One, everyone's lying. And two, it's the truth. So which one do you pick? There's no gun to your head here. Was Edgar Cayce lying about the Great Lakes emptying into the Gulf of Mexico? Did Al Bielek make up his journey into the future to see the Great Lakes emptying into the Gulf of Mexico? Maybe you think Andrew Basiago is lying too. The Insider says he watched this planet coming in on a screen, and that the signal was coming from the Hubble Space Telescope. Is he lying too? He didn't sound like he was lying to me. To me, it sounds like someone describing what he actually saw, vividly. At 2 minutes and 6 seconds into this video, he said we could see it was a blazing hot ball of fire. He said it was a solar system, and that it's coming through our solar system, and that can't be good, he said. Then he said something really scary. At 2 minutes and 30 seconds into this, he said it has asteroids that appear to be 500 miles across. Now, if one of them hits the Earth, you can kiss your sweet ass goodbye. We can't take a hit like that. Even if we have an underground city retreat, like those who have raped and pillaged our country, and if they die in their bunkers, you know we should all cry for them. Sob, sob. At 3 minutes and 5 seconds, the Insider is talking about meteorites, and it's clear that he's not a scientist, because a meteor is in space, and a meteorite, it's a meteor that hit the Earth and did not burn up in the atmosphere. So I don't know what he's talking about when he claims that meteors go back for millions of miles in the tail of this orbiting solar system. So if the tail is millions of miles long, this thing is going to make quite a spectacle in the sky. A solar system with 7 planets passing nearby the Earth, 5 times closer than the sun. But anyway, if he's describing what he saw, you have to allow for some of one of the 7 planets in that system, a meteor. If he perceived that the objects go back for millions of miles in the tail, those objects have to be fairly large. And his testimony is useful, because nobody else has testimony like this. The Hubble Space Telescope is not accessible to everyone, and it would be fairly easy to determine who this guy is if the CIA wants to know. It could be that for talking he's dead by now, but I don't know. I don't expect any future interviews with this guy. This is a one-shot deal, where he reveals the truth, they kill him, or they tell him just to keep quiet. The information he has is a lot more valuable than the information that Bradley Manning had, because hundreds of thousands of people had access to the information that Bradley Manning had. What Manning released was of no value compared to the eyewitness testimony of somebody who watched Nibiru come in. That is far, far more damaging to the bankers who have mortgage assets. I have not reached any conclusions. I'm still collecting the facts and the eyewitness testimonies, and I see a pattern. Either all these people are lying and are the greatest actors that Hollywood has ever seen, or they are simply telling the truth. The government says they are lying. What do you think? The government, meaning the secret government that puts out all the propaganda, wants you to believe in them after they've been caught lying about everything from NASA and space to the puppet presidential race to the economy and the unemployment rates. At 3 minutes 40 seconds into this video, he's saying that the speed of this object or solar system will increase as it comes in. It has to, in order to achieve breakaway speed. And that is scientifically correct. So someone is telling him the truth. But if they kill this whistleblower, you can be sure that they will have to neutralize his CIA friends also, because they provided him with information. Leaks are plugged in a hurry in the CIA. They don't call the CIA Murder Incorporated for nothing, you know. I had read that the closest Nibiru will come is 14 million miles, and this guy says 20 million miles instead. Either way, that's too close, and this large thing can rob us of our atmosphere, as Mars was robbed a long time ago. There is also a huge gash in Mars that makes our Grand Canyon look like a nick on a fender. The gash covers about a quarter of the surface when you're looking at Mars head-on. What caused this? Well, Nibiru is on the table as one possible explanation. Based on what this insider reports, you have to coalesce this information with all else that you know about Mars and the gash and the history of the aliens have told us about our solar system. I'm not too proud to consider anyone's testimony if they claim that they watched this thing coming in on the Hubble Space Telescope. I'll consider all the testimony and I will decide what I believe, not the secret government. I don't want them doing my thinking for me. If I want to hear the testimony of Lacerta, a lizard who's lived on this planet, her species has lived on this planet for 65 million years. What are you doing here? Nobody said anything about a bunny rabbit. I'm talking about Lacerta. She's a lizard. Go get Lacerta. That's not Lacerta. That's Towelhead. Lacerta is a lizard. There. That's better. Thank you. She's not an alien. She's a Terran. Or Errol, whose galaxy is so far away that we can't even see it from Earth. If I want to listen to Semyasi, Quetzal, or Ptah, who are all Palladians, and their friend Asket, who's from the Dal universe. If I want to listen to Nancy Leader's friends, the Greys, from Zeta Reticuli, who have been giving us very accurate information for about a decade now, I will hear all of them, and dozens others if I want to, and I will decide what I believe. And nobody's going to stop me with ridicule or humiliation. I'm humble enough to stand up to the humiliation. I don't care about me, I care about the truth. So go ahead and call me names if you want. And I will say to you, kiss my shorts. I don't need your approval to watch whatever I want. Go back to your ball games and your sitcoms and dull your minds so you can no longer think. And they'll inject you with a toxin and you'll be dead in no time now that they have full access to your veins. I will never voluntarily submit to any kind of shot by government. No inoculations from government, because I'm aware of what they have done in the past to innocent people, and I don't trust government. Calling me names is one thing, but gaining direct access to my vein is a little too personal for me. At 3 minutes and 54 seconds into this video, this insider says, this object is going to flip us upside down. Now, does that sound like a pole shift to you? It's possible that the Earth's core remains in place and just the crust shifts. But to those on the surface, it really doesn't matter if the poles shift or the crust shifts, because the poles are located now in a different place than before, either way. I want to make that distinction because pseudoscientists are going to argue the impression that there was a reversal of the poles. When a large magnetic object comes whizzing past the Earth at a distance of 20 million miles, which is about 22% of the distance to the Sun, that's too close for me, and it could cause this planet to shift suddenly, not the core, but the crust. It's like the cheese on your pizza slides. Now do you get it? And your pepperoni goes flying. I would prefer that this thing was not 20 million miles away, but 500 million miles away. 4 or 5 astronomical units out. The astronomical unit is the distance from the Earth to the Sun. I wish it was 5 times that distance, not 20 million miles. It's 1/5 of the distance. Even 500 million miles is still too close. It will cause earthquakes and volcanoes, like we've been having, and a lot of shifting of the plates, some sinking and some plates lifting up, uplifting. Edgar Casey said that Mu and Atlantis will rise, and the aliens told us that Mu and Atlantis will rise again. Can you believe this? I don't know if it's true. I can't advise you. I'm still collecting the testimonies and trying to figure it all out myself. And you know how dumb I am. I told you I believed all this stuff that they were telling us from the Galactic Federation of Light. How smart can I be? Anyway, at 4 minutes into this, the insider issues a guarantee that 70-pound meteorites will fall to the Earth like hail. He said he guaranteed it. He issued a guarantee that they will. And if they don't, he's going to go out there and gather them all up and make sure that they do. Just kidding. If he's right, look out, because survival will be unlikely. I've been hit by hail, and the ice bullets were small, so it didn't hurt that much. But hail has damaged cars because it's been as large as golf balls. And those only fell from the atmosphere. Imagine something coming in from space at 3 kilometers a second or something. What do you think would happen if a 70-pound iron rock lands on your car, traveling at 3 kilometers a second? You have insurance? It won't help. You're not going to be able to file an insurance claim. You'll be too dead to make a claim, for one, and for two, the insurance company will be too dead from all the tens of millions of similar claims. They're on the verge of bankruptcy now. How could they stand up to a hail of 70-pound rocks from space? They're not going to pay anybody. At 4 minutes and 30 seconds into this guy is telling everybody that they need to be at least 50 feet underground with concrete above their head when this hail starts. Well, folks, I'll tell you something. If a 70-pound rock is fired at the speed of 3 kilometers a second and you're 50 feet underground, you're dead. Trust me, you're dead. That thing will turn concrete into liquid. It'll turn rocks into liquid. It'll be like a volcano. That kind of kinetic energy will turn rocks into lava. You'll be killed by the heat, if nothing else. The impact will kill you if it lands on your head and you're 50 feet underground with cement. You could have a 50-foot thick cement and it will go right through it. Ask the scientists. Do the physics. He said that he was telling everybody that they need to be 50 feet underground. That means he's been talking and he's lived. Well, how does he do that? How does he save his butt from being killed by the CIA? Is he too important to be killed? He uses the word astronomers. He doesn't even say it right. It's astronomers. And he learned to say it wrong. He put the M and the N in different places. Astronomers. He doesn't sound like somebody who's that important. He did not sound well educated. But he was in the right place and he had CIA buddies and he was allowed to watch this. He also talked, which tells me he's not very smart. He should have kept the secret. Because one, he's not doing the people any good. If they all knew, what good would it do them? They'd all die anyway. A few are going to make it. A few very smart people are going to survive this somehow. I'm not sure how. Anyway, the link on your screen is to a video which has been heard by about 11,000 people. And it's not the only copy, so if you have not heard it, you might want to hear it. There's a lot more to report to you, but I've covered about a third of the recording, and I think that's enough to give you an idea of what he's talking about. Thank you for listening.